All right, so now you know a little bit about measurement microphones. You know how to find your measurements of your room and figure out the most common mode ringing problems, which are modal ringing has to do with the low end of stuff. So usually it'll start at about 400 hertz and go down to the sub frequencies. So now let's talk about how you actually shoot your room and get a little bit of an imprint of where you're at. Because as we've talked about before, you cannot change anything or improve anything that you don't measure. Like, you don't know a starting point. You're gonna lose some weight. How much do you weigh right now, right? How big are your arms if you're trying to put 2 inches on your arms? You won't know, right? So that's what we're doing here, and I'm gonna show you the free software that you can use. Just Google REW, Analyzer, REW, Room Acoustics, whatever, and you can download this software for either Mac or PC, and it's free, which is awesome, right? And so I'm gonna get into just a little bit of this software and show you a little rundown of how this works a little bit. I'm not gonna get into detail with this. You can easily just read the manual for it if it's something you wanna use to tune your room, shoot your room, see where you're at. So every time I get into new software, I always look at the interface, and you'll see a lot of the times with this kind of acoustic analyst software, nothing's here. You're like, where do I start? What's going on, right? So there's a few things you have to understand about acoustic software. It's going to shoot signal through your speakers, and it's going to capture signal into your microphone. Right? So you need your measurement microphone set up going into your input, either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, wherever, into your interface. And then you want to shoot out the speakers 1 and 2, which is your left and right. Have your monitor level up a little bit. And that's really what it's doing. It's going to shoot a signal. It's going to sweep the room, and your microphone's going to be placed in the listening position. And we're going to get an imprint of what your speakers are doing in the listening position of your room, and what problems you have, what dips in what frequencies and what peaks in what frequencies. So that's the first thing you need to understand. This software needs an input of your microphone, and it needs an output of your speakers so that it shoots the room, the microphone measures the room, and then it can capture and show you an analysis of your room. So hopefully that's all really clear, because that is very, very important to shooting your room. You need those things, and you need to understand those things before you just open this up and start, fumbling around like an idiot. Now I'm going to show you a couple preferences that we need to make sure that are in place as well. So if you go to Room EQ Wizard, REW. Okay, so anyway, we're going to look at the back end here. You have sound card, which you need to make sure is set up. Right here, we're just using the Scarlett. If you have a Scarlett or something similar, you're good to go. Your sample rate, your buffer, don't worry about any of this stuff. What I would worry about is your speakers, and make sure that you have your speakers both left and right, so that you're bringing the output of left and right. Timing reference, this is the select timing reference output channel. You don't really need to worry about this. Don't worry about that right now. Input device, make sure that is also your interface selected. Remember, your microphone is being inputted into your input device, and the input is going to be microphone here. And this is a loop back input. All this is asking you is, on the Scarlett, left is channel 1, which is microphone preamp 1, and right is channel 2, microphone preamp 2. This lavalier microphone that I'm talking into right now is going into preamp 1, which is left. So we want to choose R. Okay, so right meaning channel 2. That's where this measurement microphone here is going into the interface. So just make sure your inputs and outputs are right. That's very, very important. And then something here you can check out is, last thing really, is to say, hey, I want to use my main speakers to test the signal, unless you have a subwoofer, right? So if you have a subwoofer connected to your system, you want to select that. And there's a whole help column down here, so please just read that and understand it, get into the details of this, because it'll be useful in the other endeavors and the other modules of shooting your room and tuning your room and all that stuff. And understanding acoustics is just good stuff to read up on. Okay, so you can hit check levels here, and when you hit next, it'll shoot a signal through your speakers. Oh, isn't that just so cool? Little pink noise, right? So what that's going to show you is it's going to show your output, your dBFS, which is your full scale decibels, and it'll show you the input, default input RMS signal level, and then it'll also show you the reference in. So RMS signal level dB below, FS red line shows peak level, okay? So don't worry about all this stuff, just make sure you're seeing meters and you understand where the signal is coming in, okay? So in here, this in is going to be my microphone preamp that's feeding my measurement microphone. And just make sure of that. And you could easily do that by just going check levels and you notice when I tap the diaphragm of this microphone, you see the in jumping up in volume. So that's a really great way to do it. Just make sure that you have that signal and you're seeing it right. Okay, now something super important to measuring your room and getting a good measurement is to use a measurement microphone, as we talked about, but you also need a calibration file for that microphone, okay? So what we're gonna do, and you can just search the internet for the calibration file. This is a Behringer ECM 8000 measurement microphone. So all I need to do is go to browse. I've already downloaded the test file, and I'm gonna go to my downloads, and I'm gonna open up my, my calibration file. Now there's a calibration file and there's an edited calibration file. I won't get into why this is edited, but I'm just going to select the edited one because I know I've actually gone in and made sure that it's the most calibrated for this specific microphone, okay? So there you go. Now we have our text, we have our calibration file, which is just a .text document, okay? And you're all set up, you're ready to go. You have your input, your output, you know your microphone's getting signal, you got your calibration signal file on your microphone. Now let's go to the next tab and look at this, which is going to be our mic meter. This is gonna ask you, do you wanna use C-weighted SPL meter or do you wanna use a mic or C-weighted SPL meter? So we're using a mic, right? Pretty obvious. And then for the file, you can actually load that same file here as well, calibration file. It says the sound card cal file is the same as the mic cal file. Oh, sorry, so that's a sound card calibration file, which is actually like a calibration file that you could download for the Focusrite Scarlett. I'm not gonna download that right now, but you could probably do the same thing, just Google it, right? What that's gonna do is it's gonna make up for any inconsistencies in the mic preamp, any coloration, any frequency dips or peaks. But for this tutorial and for you understanding how to shoot your room and get a general idea of what the issues are, I'm not gonna go too far down that rabbit hole, right? Okay, and then you got comms. Don't worry about any of this right now. You can read about it. House curve, you can read about that as well. This curve data and showing you the response, bass management of the speakers, all that stuff. Like if you tweak the EQs on your speakers, etc. And then, don't worry about any of these either. And the equalizers, you can get really in detail with this stuff. We're not gonna do that with this tutorial. If you do wanna read more about and go more deep into what all this calibration stuff is, you can be my guest, go nerd out on it. Okay, so now we have everything set up. What do you do now? Like, what's going on? Like, I got my calibration file, I got my microphone plugged in, I got my speakers, I know levels are coming in. Well, let's open up the levels meter and you'll start to see what's going on here. So that's me, I'm patting the measurement microphone and that's gonna be here on this meter here. And then I'm gonna turn off, I'm actually gonna bring my volume all the way down on my lav here. And you'll see that's the reference in. Okay, so I'm still talking. Okay, so now we have our reference in and our calibration microphone. Those are gonna be the same thing. We're gonna find we see meters. Meters are important, is basically what that's about. I'm not gonna I'm just rambling here, but the meters are important to show that you got signal coming in, okay? So I always check my meters. And now let's go to our SPL meter. And you can see here, SPL meter is going to show you the dB. And the first thing you have to do with this, even if you went to here, right? Even if you went to, hey, let's test it. Let's just measure. So you go to measure and you click measure and you say make a measurement. It's going to ask you to check levels first, okay? That's always what you need to do. You need to check and you need to calibrate before you start thinking that anything's gonna be good. So let's calibrate. Let's go to the SPL meter and let's calibrate it. Okay, so here's where you're gonna choose use subwoofer, use our speaker cal, or use an external signal. We're going to use the speaker cal signal. Okay, so just so you can understand what I'm doing, I'm just matching the dB that it's asking me to match on the screen. So this is saying maximum SPL with this calibration is 86 dB. If you need to measure higher SPL, the input sensitivity will need to be reduced. So we got to be really careful to not go over, right? So when we go to calibrate, we can actually take, for example, I'm not going to play it through the speakers. I'm going to turn the speaker output down all the way. But if I hit calibrate here, and I say, okay, we want to use the speaker signal again, and I turn this down, like, you know, maybe I go, okay, I want it to go like 70 dB, right? Because we saw that there's a big red over. So you want to make sure that when you calibrate it, that it's not going over. So just be careful. You're kind of doing a combination of turning your speakers up to fill the room and turning your microphone preamp up enough to where it's getting enough signal, but you do not want to clip the microphone. You do not want to be bringing the mic preamp up too high, right? Because if you bring it up too high, it's going to clip, and then you're going to get, the signal's not going to be right. You're going to get a bad reading because the microphone's just going to go, and then you're going to see some weirdness in your graph and your measurement. So here what we're going to do is we're just going to find an SPL, and like we're going to, 70 is good, right? Or we might even just go like 65 or so, right? 65 is still pretty loud. And then what we're going to do is adjust the SPL figure below until it matches the reading on your own SPL meter. So what I was kind of doing is I was doing it backwards, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this microphone here. I'm going to turn up the speakers, and we're going to just let this dB meter here show us a readout, and then we're going to put that readout here in this box. So I'm sorry I confused you a little bit. This is my first time using this software, but that's how we're gonna do it. You just match it up, okay? So let's get a good volume going, get a good signal going into the microphone, the measurement microphone, without clipping, and then we will match the dB here. Okay, so as you can see now, it's telling me the maximum is 86 dB. So we're well within the range. We're gonna say okay here. And we know that our listening position is just going to be where I'm listening right here, you know, to work, like how I like to mix records, produce, wherever, right? So that's all calibrated. And now we have that dB there. We're good to go. Speakers are turned up to a certain monitor level, etc. And now let's give it a test. You know, it's time to actually measure, right? So now we come into the measurement window. I know this is a lot, so hopefully, you know, you can just always go back and watch this over and over again, you know, follow along as you're doing this, etc. But now I go to the measurement microphone window, and let's say, okay, we don't want any timing reference. We don't need to worry about that. Measure using 256K log sweep from 0 to 200 hertz at, negative 10 dB, taking 5.9 seconds. This is like literally, like this is where you really get into the nitty gritty here. So it's saying the start frequency, the end frequency. What I want to do is show a full spectrum, okay? And I also don't want to start at 0 hertz. That's ridiculous. Like, you know, like the speakers might just blow up if they start at 0 hertz. Look at like where your speakers start to roll off. These are Yamaha HS5s. They probably start to roll off around 50 to 45 hertz, right? Which means they probably reach down to about 35 hertz, right? Is what you're gonna hear. So let's just start around there. Like, let's go, okay, 35 hertz is our starting frequency. And then our end frequency, we actually want this to be 20,000. So 20,000 is going to give us this full spectrum. That's gonna be 35 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz, right? And that's just going all the way up to the top where the tweeter's hitting and everything. Okay, and then the length of this, it's saying 256K. Yeah, let's start with that. The total time is 5.9 seconds. That's actually a pretty long sweep. So let's see if we can go, yeah, like a 3-second sweep I think is plenty. Usually we want to just do like really quick sweeps, but the longer you sweep, the more you're going to see the decay time of the modes in your room and how long they ring out. Now what does that mean? That means like when you get to 100 hertz and it goes and it's like ringing for a long time, you're going to let the room, it rings. So then the waterfall display that we're going to see in the room EQ, and all that stuff, will show you how long that's ringing out. And as we go to bass trap and everything, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to let that ring out a lot less. So that way you're not EQing the crap out of your kick drum because you're hearing boom, boom, when really the kick drum's just going boom, boom, but your room's going boom, boom. So you're like, what's going on with the kick drum? So you start using all this different software to try to fix a problem that your room is introducing, not your speakers, not the sample, not the EQing compression that you're doing. So that's why you tune the room, right? So let's get into this. So just one sweep, we're gonna do that long, 3 seconds, speakers, and input microphone. So let's check the levels first, and I'm going to mute my microphone, so you're probably not gonna hear this part of it. And yeah, we're gonna check the levels, and then we're gonna start measuring. It's gonna be fun. So let's put our microphone back in the listening position here, which is just going to be right in the middle. Now remember, this is a Behringer omnidirectional microphone, so everything's capturing the whole room. Okay, it's not just capturing what's in front of it. You can literally stand it like this and put it in a listening position, whatever you want to do. It is not directional, it is omnidirectional. Okay, I repeat. I'm just putting this like where my head would be when I'm mixing or I'm producing here, okay? So listening position is where you want that microphone and where you want that capsule, okay? And the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to check the levels, turn down my mic, and we're gonna check levels here. Now you can see here, it's saying abort if excessive clipping occurs. Cool. And it's saying level okay, negative 19.7 dB. Good job. Now let's start measuring. Okay, so here we are, we have our first measurement. This is what rooms look like. Like they straight up look like a mess, right? So at 100 hertz, it's a typical problem with most rooms, most bedrooms, square rooms, etc. You're gonna see like a massive dip here. Like, so that's it. If we're reading the dB on the left-hand side on the display here, that's at 55.69 dB. And then you can see here, this is 194 hertz at 73.31. So just that big of a difference of 55 to 73. I mean, come on, that's almost 20 dB of a difference, which means you're just gonna totally lose parts of your kick drum, your bass, all that stuff. And then down here at 43 hertz, you have about 71. What we wanna do is we wanna see this start to clear up. We wanna see this start to clear up. But you're noticing that these are the modes, right? These are like the modal ringing areas. So you have, 92 hertz to about 114. Like that's a big crevice. And then you'll probably see that in multiples here, right? So now we get up to 221, 250, 253, 290. That doesn't mean that these peaked areas here are not problems. It just means that in the listening position, we're getting less 95 hertz, which means we're probably getting a lot of 95 hertz in that area somewhere else in the room, right? The back of the room, closer to the speakers, front wall, maybe in the corners, etc. And then this is a big problem. If you have a dip this crazy on like the 2K area, you're going to be missing a lot of intelligibility and vocals and stuff, and you'll probably start to add a lot more into the vocals, which is, that's scary. So let's look at these different options here. You have the impulse, which is going to show you like what the impulse is doing. It's just dBFS, and it's showing you the impulse and how long it was. You have the filtered IR, which is impulse response filtered, so it's showing you as it goes filtered down. You don't need to really worry about too much of that. I would worry about the RT60 time, which is basically how long certain frequencies are ringing out. And you'll notice here that you have 78 Hertz, and that's ringing for quite a while. Like it's a long ringing wave. And then down here, again, that 155 area, that's ringing out really like short. So you have different ringing going on in the room. Clarity, decay, I won't worry about that either. Waterfall display is usually what I want to see. So we're going to generate that. You have to go here and generate it. And this is typically what I like to look at because it gives me so much insight into what's going on. So down here, you could see at, 50 Hertz, 56 Hertz. Yeah, there's a huge modal ringing thing going on. And the waterfall display is showing you how long that thing is ringing out. So 75 Hertz is going boom. Like it's taking forever to ring out in the room, which is really scary. We want to get that down a little bit. But then you can see a huge dip here, which is really also scary. So what we want to do with the tuning and the speaker placement and movement and all that is we want to get this to feel a little bit more even, right? We don't want to see this thing looking like, you know, a bunch of slices and some are really long and some are really short. That's actually really bad, right? But that's how most rooms are looking, right? And then you can go up here and wow, like this is just crazy right here. Like as we get into that 127 and stuff, it's just ringing so loud. Like that is going to be a problem. And that's something you'll probably try to take out with a bunch of EQ. I'm sorry, it's up higher. So it's like 200 in the 200 area. This is a really weird waterfall display. I'm not used to it, but okay. So here we have 196 Hertz. Like that's huge, right? That's like the punch of a lot of kick drums, bass, you know, all that stuff. So that's really loud. It's like ringing out in the room. We want to trap that up as much as possible and find out where that's at. So that's just this software. This is the free software. It's a little clunky. It's a little weird. But in the next module, I want to show you a paid software that I'm much more familiar with. And also I think is well worth the price. So let's go. Let's get into a different software and let's show you those readings and show you, see if the softwares are similar and see if there's any differences and deviations.